Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. Today I am going to be showing you how to make biscotti. Biscotti is super duper tasty. It is a lovely twice baked Italian sort of cookie. You can make it in all kinds of different flavors. Today I'm going to be doing an almond vanilla biscotti, and I'm going to be doing a sort of chocolate, almost a mocha glaze to go on top, but you can really customize it any way you want. So all the ingredients and measurements are listed down below, and we can start baking. So the first thing that we are going to do is go ahead and give our almonds a nice little toast. I'm just going to go ahead and take a baking sheet, and I'm going to add all my almonds in a nice single layer, and I'm going to pop them into an oven preheated to about 350 degrees. I'm going to leave them in there for about 5 to 10 minutes. The temperature and the time doesn't really matter. You can throw them into whatever temperature you have. You're just going to leave them in until they are nice and sort of fragrant. They should smell like a nice toasty almond, and that is how you know that it is time to take them out. Now, while our almonds are toasting, we're going to go ahead and prepare two things. The first is our dry ingredients. Now, into a large bowl, you're going to go ahead and mix together your flour, sugar, baking powder, and a nice big pinch of salt. Go ahead and give this a nice mix just with a whisk or a spatula, and then you can go ahead and set that aside for later. Now for the wet ingredients, we are going to start by using a half of vanilla bean. This is optional. You can just use vanilla extract if you prefer, but I like the little speckles as well as the flavor that you get from a vanilla bean. So I went ahead and cut that open, and then used the back of my knife to scrape out all those nice little vanilla bean seeds. Make sure that you keep the pod. You can add it into some sugar and make vanilla sugar, or you can put it in a jar with all of your other vanilla bean pods and just cover them with a little bit of vodka, and in about a year you'll have some really nice homemade vanilla. But go ahead and add the seeds into a separate bowl, and into that you're going to add 2 eggs. Go ahead and crack them in there, and then we're going to give them a nice whisk up, just with a whisk or a fork, until they are nicely scrambled. To this we're going to add our melted butter and mix once more until it is just combined. Now at this point you're going to stop until your almonds are just about ready. We don't want to mix this too soon, but once the almonds are nice and toasty, you can go ahead and take your wet ingredients and pour them all at once into the bowl with your dry ingredients. Now you're just going to go ahead and use a spatula or a spoon or your hands, and you're going to mix this together until it is almost completely combined. Once it is getting there and it hasn't quite come together, but it does look like it's most of the way incorporated, you can go ahead and add your almonds. Now I am going to be mixing this with my hands at the end, and you might need to as well. So if you have sensitive hands, if you don't want to burn your hands, then you maybe want to wait a little bit longer for your almonds to cool down. Mine were pretty toasty hot when I was mixing these, so you know, if you're not about that, then go ahead and leave your almonds to cool down. Mine were nice and toasty, so it was just a little bit more fun, you know? So go ahead and add in your toasted almonds. I opted not to chop mine up, but you can if you prefer. So go ahead and add your nice toasty almonds. You can continue mixing with a spatula for a few seconds, but at this point I generally find that you need to switch to using your hands to sort of smushing and kneading the cookie dough mixture together. Once your cookie dough has formed a nice cohesive mass, you're going to go ahead and pull over another baking sheet. This one needs to be lined with a sheet of parchment paper, and you're going to go ahead and take your mass of cookie dough. You're going to put it onto your baking sheet, and we're going to carefully shape it into sort of a flattened log shape. It should look like an oval with semi-straight sides, nice and long, about 10 inches long by about 4 inches wide. Once your dough is shaped into a nice log, we can go ahead and throw it into a 325 Fahrenheit oven, and it's going to bake for around 20 to 30 minutes. What you are looking for before you take your cookie log out is that it should be nice and a very light golden brown. And when you press on the center, it shouldn't really give in to your press. It should be relatively firm so that we can tell that it is almost all the way cooked through. Now we're going to go ahead and let our cookie cool down before we cut it up and put it back into the oven for its second bake to dry out. We don't want to cut it while it is still hot, or else it will crumble and it will be just a big mess trying to cut into it. So go ahead and leave it to cool down just on its cookie sheet until it is cool enough that you can handle it. It can still be somewhat warm though. Now once your cookie log is nice and cooled down, we can come back to it and we can start cutting it into our biscotti pieces. Now you're just going to start by cutting on a slight angle. You don't have to do this. You can go straight up and down if you like, but it just sort of changes the size and the length of the biscotti, as well as a little bit around the sides, but you won't really notice that. So if you want a nice long biscotti, you can cut on more of an angle, and if you want it shorter, you can go on less of an angle. So go ahead and cut off the end piece. I generally don't cook this, I just save it, and it's a little snack for me. But go ahead and set that aside, and then you're going to cut them into about 1/2 inch to 1 inch pieces. I like to use my finger as a spacer so that I can know that all my cookies are about uniform. So go ahead and work your way along the log, cutting these. You do want to be using a nice sharp serrated knife. If you're using a regular chef's knife, then it will just squish the cookie mainly, so you want something nice and serrated like a bread knife. So go ahead and cut all the way along the log, and then we're going to place our cookie pieces back on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper, and they're going to go into the oven at 375 degrees this time for around 15 minutes. Now, about 2/3 of the way through the cooking time, we are going to want to flip our cookies around just to make sure that they get an even bake on the top and the bottom. So just go ahead and pull them out of the oven and then give them a quick flip over and then throw them back in the oven for the last 5 or so minutes. Once your cookies are done, they should be a nice light golden brown, and they should feel dry on the top and no longer sort of moist and wet on the inside. Now, the last thing that I'm going to do with my cookies is add a nice little Mocha ganache for the top. This is optional, but everybody likes a biscotti that has just a little bit of chocolate dip on it. So for this, all I'm going to do is take some nice cut up dark chocolate, and I'm going to add a little bit of instant espresso powder. Now in a mug, I've got some cream. I know you can't see it because it's not a see-through mug, but just trust me, there's cream in there. And I'm going to go ahead and pop this in the microwave to get it to heat up. I want it to be really nice and steamy so that it will melt our chocolate. So I threw it in the microwave for about 30 seconds, then you can take it out and you're going to pour it over top of your chocolate and espresso powder. You don't want to stir this right away, you want to leave it for a few seconds just so that the cream really melts all the chocolate that is on top as well as underneath. After about 30 seconds, you can go ahead and stir up your cream and chocolate, and you should get a nice smooth ganache that smells like coffee and chocolate in a beautiful combination. Now I'm just going to go ahead and tip this into a paper piping cone that I made. You can use a piping bag, or you can just use a spoon or a knife and sort of drizzle it on top of your biscotti, or you can even dip it in if you prefer that sort of look. Now I'm going to go ahead and drizzle it all over the top of my biscotti. These are slightly cooled at this point, so my chocolate's not all going to just run off or soak into my biscotti. Now you're just going to go ahead and set these aside for a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and they should cool down. Your ganache should set up just a little bit more so they don't get you super sticky and chocolatey when you are trying to eat. And here are the completed biscotti. These are so pretty. I really especially love biscotti for dipping. If I've got hot chocolate or a coffee or a tea or anything like that, I like having a biscotti along with it just to dip in to make it nice and soft. It's sort of like the grown-up version of Oreos and milk. So I hope you make these, I hope you enjoy, and I will see you next time.